All right, number 5, find the domain and range of the function, and we've been given f of x equals x squared minus 4x plus 14. And we know that this is a quadratic equation, which means if we were to graph this equation, we would have ourselves a parabola that opens up. And for parabolas that open up or down, which is all we're dealing with on this practice test, just parabolas that open up or down, the domain for those are always going to be negative infinity to positive infinity. All right, so if your parabola opens up or down, the domain for that parabola will be negative infinity to positive infinity. All right, to find the range, it takes a little more work, but nothing that we can't handle. So number 5 here, this is the first time that we've seen an equation in standard form. Up to this point, we've seen vertex form, but this is the first time that we've seen standard form. And standard form is defined as f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So to find the range of this function, what we need to do is take the standard form that we were given, rewrite it into vertex form, and then based on the y value from that vertex, we can go ahead and find the range. So let's go ahead and take this standard form and rewrite it in vertex form. So to do that, I'm going to rewrite what we were originally given. So x squared, minus 4x plus 14. And what we're going to do first is group the first two terms together, these x terms together, because what we're going to do is complete the square using these two terms. All right, so if you watched the previous playlist for test number 2, you might recall that when completing the square, I like to go ahead and before I actually complete the square, I rewrite my terms one final time, including some blank spaces so that I remember what it is that I need to do. And in this case, when we complete the square, we're going to be adding some number inside, and whatever number we add to the inside, we have to subtract from the outside. So I like to rewrite my expression here on the right-hand side one more time, including these blank lines so that I don't forget what I'm doing. All right, and we remember that when we complete the square, we have to take half the middle term and square it. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And then when we square this, we end up with positive 4. So we're going to add 4 to the inside, but because we're adding 4 to the inside, we have to subtract 4 from the outside. And that's where those little blank lines come in to play. So it just helps me to remember what we're doing. All right, so now that we've completed the square with the terms inside, this now is what's known as a perfect square trinomial. So we can go ahead and rewrite these three terms as a perfect square binomial. So that'll be x minus 2 squared, and then plus 14 or positive 14 minus 4 gives us plus 10. So there we have it. We've went from standard form to vertex form, and now we can clearly identify the vertex of this parabola is going to be at the point 2, 10. All right, and you might be asking, well, why do we have to go through all this work? Well, remember what we talked about in, I think it was question 1. We said that the vertex of a parabola that opens up is going to be the lowest point on that graph. And so if the lowest point on our parabola is at the point 2, 10, then we know the smallest y value that this graph will ever have is positive 10. And from there, if this graph opens up, the y values are only going to get bigger from there. So they start at 10, and we use a bracket because we're including the number 10, and from there they get bigger. And so where do they get bigger towards? They're tending towards infinity. All right, and so there's our range, 10 to infinity. And again, make sure you use a bracket with the 10 and a parentheses with your infinity. And so there we have it. We have our domain, negative infinity to positive infinity, and our range, positive 10 up to infinity. All right, and we can go ahead and, I didn't pull up the calculator in advance, but we'll go ahead and quickly I'll pull it up here so that we can take a look just to confirm what it is that we're saying. So if you have your graphing calculator, go ahead and take it out. And what we're going to do is in our y equals screen, we'll go ahead and put in this equation. So we have x squared minus 4x plus 14. And I'll make sure that we have a standard window. I don't know if that's going to show up. I think it's going to be just outside. Yeah, so let's go ahead and we'll zoom out just a little bit. And there we can see our parabola. And again, we can see that this opens up as we thought it would based on our equation. And we can see that, again, if the vertex is at the point, what did we say it was at? 210. Well, if 10 is the smallest y value this graph will ever have, from this point, the y values only get bigger, and they get bigger out to infinity. And so that's why our range is positive 10 to infinity. And again, the domain for all parabolas that open up or down is always negative infinity to positive infinity.